Tonight we're breaking down the much-hyped $10,000 promise, the claim that the average American family could see an extra 10 grand under a potential second Trump administration. This isn't a single check. It's a mix of proposed tax cuts, credits, and policy shifts, each with its own consequences. We'll show you where this money is supposed to come from, eliminating taxes on tips and overtime, expanding the child tax credit, and making the 2017 tax cuts permanent. But not every family will see this amount. The benefits are uneven, and there's fierce debate, even among Republicans, about the final shape and how to pay for it. The numbers are big, and the stakes are bigger. So let's map it out. We'll trace who wins, who loses, and how families, workers, and corporations are affected. We'll also look at the other side, the proposed cuts and the long-term debt. By the end, you'll have a clearer picture of what this one big, beautiful bill could mean for you and the country. Let's dig in. Let's start with the headline, $10,000. It sounds like a direct payment, but it's not. This number is a projection combining several potential tax changes, not a guaranteed check. The pieces making the 2017 tax cuts permanent, eliminating federal tax on tips and overtime, and increasing the child tax credit. But these don't apply equally. A single person with no kids and no overtime? Very different from a family of 5 with 2 hourly workers. Your benefit depends on income, family size, job type, and more. The Committee for a Responsible Federal Budget says you only get close to $10,000 with very generous assumptions, and only if all proposals pass as envisioned. For some middle to upper middle income families with kids, the savings could be substantial. For others, much less. Low-income seniors or young professionals without kids, their benefit is negligible. The distribution is uneven by design. So as we break down each proposal, remember this isn't a universal payment. It's a set of targeted changes. The real question, who's being targeted and who's left out? That's the story behind the big number. Let's move to the first major component, the proposal for tips and overtime. Now let's look at the proposal to make all tips and overtime pay exempt from federal income tax. This is a big deal for millions in the service and hourly sectors, waiters, bartenders, hotel staff, delivery drivers, construction workers. For them, tax-free tips and overtime could mean a real boost in take-home pay. But for salaried workers with no tips or overtime, this does nothing. The benefit is uneven, by job, by geography. 2 people earning $60,000, one is a manager, one is a bartender. The bartender could pay much less in taxes. Economists question the fairness, since it favors certain types of labor. Implementation is a challenge. How would the IRS track this? Would it affect Social Security and Medicare contributions? The Penn-Wharton budget model estimates making tips tax-free could cost $150, $250 billion over 10 years. Add overtime, and the cost grows. That's a huge hole in the federal budget, likely filled by spending cuts or more debt. So while this is a powerful message for a specific group, it's not a universal benefit. The winners see a direct gain. Everyone else helps pay for it. It's a targeted cut, creating new winners and losers. Next, the centerpiece for many families, a major expansion of the child tax credit. The current credit is $2,000 per child. The proposal could raise it to $3,000, $3,600 as seen in 2021. For a family with 2 kids, that's a jump from $4,000 to over $7,000, a big deal for the middle class. Combine this with the 2017 tax cuts, and some families could approach that $10,000 figure, but the details matter. Will the credit be fully refundable, as in 2021, helping the lowest income families, or will it be tied to work, limiting the benefit for the poorest? The debate is intense, even within the GOP. Some want a generous pro-family policy, others worry about cost and work incentives. The final version will determine whether the biggest benefits go to the middle class or are shared more broadly. For families with children, this is likely the single largest source of savings, but the ultimate value depends on the details, especially refundability. 12. Now, the foundation making the 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act permanent. Without action, key provisions expire at the end of 2025, meaning higher taxes for most Americans. Extending the cuts is framed as preventing a tax hike and providing stability. For a typical family, letting the cuts expire could mean thousands more in taxes. But the benefits of the TCJA were heavily tilted toward the wealthy and corporations. The top 20% got more than half the total tax cut. The top 1% averaged over $50,000 in savings. Meanwhile, the bottom 20% saw about $60, extending the law locks in this distribution. The cost? About $4 trillion over the next decade, more than all the other proposals combined. Paying for this would require massive growth, deep spending cuts, or more debt. So while it prevents a tax hike for most, it cements a structure that favors the wealthy and adds to the national debt. This is the biggest piece of the puzzle. Let's connect the dots. Who are the biggest winners? High-income households and large corporations. The extension of the 2017 tax cuts plus possible further rate reductions means the top 5% get nearly half the benefit. The top 1%, tens of thousands in annual tax cuts. Corporations already saw their tax rate slashed from 35% to 21%, a permanent change. Further cuts could drop it to 15%. The argument, this boosts investment and jobs, but evidence is mixed. Critics point to stock buybacks, not higher wages. The direct effect is clear. More money flows to corporate profits and wealthy households. The dollar amounts for this group dwarf what a middle-class family might see. So while the messaging focuses on families and workers, the biggest financial winners are at the top. 12. Every policy has a flip side. Who stands to lose? To pay for trillions in tax cuts, spending cuts are likely, especially to programs serving low-income Americans. Medicaid is a prime target. Proposals to cap or block grant funding would mean deep cuts over time. States would have to cut benefits, restrict eligibility, or reduce payments to providers. For families relying on Medicaid, this could mean losing coverage or access to care. Nutrition assistance, SNAP, is also at risk. Tighter work requirements and benefit cuts would hit millions. For low-income families, the loss in benefits could far outweigh any small tax savings. Many don't earn enough to benefit from rate cuts or expanded credits. But they're highly vulnerable to cuts in Medicaid, SNAP, and housing assistance. For these households, the net effect could be negative, losing essential services to pay for tax cuts that mostly benefit the wealthy. 12. Beyond the wealthy, who else wins? Millions of hourly workers in service and trade industries would benefit from tax-free tips and overtime, a direct targeted pay raise. This group is a clear winner, both economically and politically. But there's another, the fossil fuel industry. A second Trump administration would likely roll back regulations, expand drilling, and boost oil, gas, and coal. The energy sector already enjoys billions in tax breaks. A friendlier administration could expand these. This, plus regulatory rollbacks, creates a very favorable environment for fossil fuel companies. In contrast, clean energy incentives would be rolled back. So the winners include both hourly workers and big energy companies, very different groups, but both stand to gain. 10. Now let's look at the long-term and collateral losers. First, the younger generation. Adding trillions to the national debt means future taxpayers will pay more, with less left for education, infrastructure, or research. Second, the clean energy sector. Rolling back the Inflation Reduction Act would halt investment in wind, solar, and EVs, especially in areas that have just started to benefit. Companies that invested based on current incentives would face uncertainty and losses. The U.S. could fall behind globally in clean tech. Third, healthcare workers and institutions. Cuts to Medicaid and Medicare mean lower payments to hospitals and doctors, especially in rural areas. This could lead to layoffs, service reductions, or even hospital closures, hurting both workers and patients. So the losers, the next generation, clean energy, and the healthcare sector, all facing long-term consequences. So that's the $10,000 promise, far more complex than a simple check. The winners: corporations, high-income earners, families with kids, and some hourly workers. The costs: social programs, clean energy, and future generations facing more debt. The debate is just beginning. The final bill could look very different. We'll keep tracking every development and keep you informed. The stakes are high: your wallet, your community, your future. Subscribe for more deep dives and updates as this story unfolds. Thanks for watching. See you next time.